Council of Shadows. The Void Hunters emerged from the darkness between stars like living shadows, their presence dimming the very light around Helios Station. Through the observation windows, Dominic watched as patches of space seemed to fold in on themselves, revealing entities that defied human comprehension. "They're exactly as I remembered," Lyra whispered, her patterns pulsing with ancient recognition. Energy parasites drawn to the brightest lights in the cosmos. The station's alarms blared as more rifts appeared, surrounding them in a net of darkness. Through their bond, Dominic felt Lyra's determination override her fear. Across the galaxy, newly awakened Nixtari were registering the threat, their collective consciousness linking for the first time in 50,000 years. "Your ancestors faced them with pure energy," Dominic said, his crystalline scar resonating with Lyra's patterns. "But we have something they didn't." First Counselor Thalia stepped forward, her own patterns beginning to brighten. The human bond, a perfect balance between matter and energy. She turned to the other council members, their stoic faces cracking under the weight of revelation. "Perhaps it's time we all remembered what it means to be guardians." Captain Tor's voice cut through the tension. "Multiple contacts approaching. Whatever those things are, they're not just observing anymore." The Void Hunters struck without warning. Tendrils of pure darkness lashed against the station's shields, seeking the energy signatures of the awakened Nixtari within. The barrier fields flared and buckled under the assault. "They're stronger than before," Lyra observed, her transformed eyes tracking the patterns of attack. "They've been feeding on something out there in the dark, growing." Dominic felt a surge of inspiration through their bond. "Then let's give them something they've never encountered before." He turned to the council members. "Your ancestors tried to fight darkness with light, but what happens when you mix the two?" Understanding dawned in Lyra's eyes. Through their connection, she grasped his idea instantly. A fusion not just between individuals but between species, the stability of human matter anchoring Nixtari energy. "You're talking about extending the bond," Dr. Khan interjected, her scientific mind racing ahead. "Not just between two individuals but between all of us. A choice not of necessity but of evolution," First Counselor Thalia finished, her voice carrying new authority. The station shuddered as another attack breached the outer shields. Warning lights flashed throughout the conference chamber as emergency systems engaged. They were running out of time. Lyra stepped into the center of the chamber, her patterns blazing. "I can initiate it, using our bond as a template, but it has to be voluntary, both species choosing to face the darkness together." Captain Tors drew her sidearm, though they all knew conventional weapons would be useless against energy beings. No debate needed. Dominic took his place beside Lyra. Through their bond, he felt the potential building, not just between them but throughout the station. Sometimes the best choices are the simplest ones. Who stands with us? First Counselor Thalia moved first, her dignity falling away in favor of necessity. One by one, the council members joined them, forming a circle. Captain Tors hesitated only a moment before stepping in, followed by Dr. Khan and the other human crew members who had gathered. The Void Hunters sensed the building energy and redoubled their assault. The station's final shields began to fail as Lyra initiated the transformation. Through their original bond, she and Dominic created a template, a perfect fusion of human stability and Nixtari power. The energy spread through the gathered circle, human and Nixtari alike. The transformation was unlike anything in either species' history. Where Lyra's awakening had been dramatic and individual, this was subtle and collective. Crystalline patterns spread across human skin, while Nixtari forms gained new density and permanence. Energy and matter found equilibrium, creating something entirely new. The Void Hunters breached the final barriers just as the transformation completed. They poured into the chamber like living darkness, seeking the feast of energy they had sensed. But what they found was unlike anything they had encountered in eons of hunting. The transformed humans and Nyxtari stood as one, their combined energy signatures neither bright nor dark but perfectly balanced. Through their new collective bond, they understood the Void Hunters for what they truly were, not enemies to be destroyed, but part of the universe's natural cycle. A cycle that had been disrupted by the Nyxtari retreat and could now be restored. Dominic felt Lyra's consciousness brush against his, stronger than ever in their enhanced state. Together, they reached out to the Void Hunters, not with fear or aggression but with understanding. The darkness recoiled, then paused, experiencing something new: balance. "They're not attacking," Captain Torres observed, her newly crystalline skin pulsing with shared awareness. "They're learning," First Counselor Thalia added, her transformed form embodying the perfect fusion they had achieved. "As are we. Perhaps this was the true purpose of our ancient role, not to fight the darkness but to help it find harmony with the light." The Void Hunters swirled around them, their patterns shifting from hungry aggression to something more complex. Through their collective bond, both humans and Nyxtari sensed the chain, the beginning of communication with entities they had once only feared. As the immediate crisis passed, Lyra turned to Dominic, their original bond now just one strand in a greater tapestry of connection. "This goes beyond anything our ancestors imagined," she said softly. "Not guardians standing against the darkness," Dominic finished, understanding flowing between them, "but guides helping all forms of life find their place in the cosmic balance." And so the balance held. Around them, humans and Nyxtari alike were discovering the implications of their transformation, not a loss of identity, but an evolution towards something that honored both their pasts and promised a future neither could have achieved alone. And in the darkness between the stars, ancient entities began to learn a new way of being, guided by the balanced light of a partnership that would change the course of galactic history forever. The news of what had happened aboard Helios Station spread through human and Nyxtari space like wildfire. Within days, ships from both civilizations were converging on the station, some seeking answers, others offering support, and a few, particularly from the more conservative factions, demanding an immediate end to what they called dangerous experimentation. Admiral Julian Blackwood of Earth Defense Command was among the first to arrive. His weathered face revealed nothing as he listened to Captain Torres' report in the station's command center, but the muscle twitching in his jaw spoke volumes. "Let me get this straight, Captain," he said when she had finished. "You allowed an unauthorized biological transformation to take place on your station, involving not only your chief medical officer, but also yourself and 23 other crew members. You then engaged in direct contact with unknown hostile entities without waiting for reinforcements or even notifying command." "With respect, Admiral," Torres replied, the crystalline patterns now visible beneath her skin pulsing slightly. "There wasn't exactly time for a committee meeting. The Void Hunters would have consumed this station and everyone on it. And now you expect me to believe these Void Hunters are just hanging around outside having a friendly chat with your transformed crew." "Not a chat precisely," Dominic interjected. "It's more of an exchange. They're curious about our balanced state. We're learning about their perception of reality." Admiral Blackwood turned his attention to Dominic, his eyes narrowing at the visible changes in the doctor. "And you, Commander Reed, your expertise is xenobiology, not diplomacy. What possessed you to offer your blood to an alien species with unknown consequences?" "Basic human decency," Dominic answered simply. "Lyra was dying, I could help the rest." He looked down at the crystalline patterns on his skin. "The rest was unexpected." "Unexpected?" The Admiral's laugh was brittle. "That's one word for it. The Terran Senate is in an uproar. Half want to quarantine this entire station. The other half want to study what's happened here in hopes of weaponizing it. Lyra, who had been observing silently, stepped forward. "And what do you want, Admiral Blackwood?" The Admiral studied her for a long moment. "I want to understand the threat. If these void hunters have been out there all this time, why haven't we detected them before? What are they capable of? And why should I believe they won't turn on us the moment they figure out how to break through your balance?" "Because we understand them now," Lyra explained. "They are cosmic scavengers, drawn to sources of unbalanced energy. They've been consuming dying stars and energy anomalies since before either of our species evolved. They only became a threat to the Nyxtari when my ancestors ascended to their pure energy state, becoming the most attractive meal in the galaxy. And now we're showing them there's another way. They can take small amounts of our balanced energy freely given without destruction. It nourishes them differently, more sustainably." "You're feeding them," the Admiral said flatly. "We're establishing symbiosis," Dominic corrected. "The same way the transformed humans and Nyxtari are doing. It's not a loss, it's an exchange. And it's already yielding benefits we never imagined." As if on cue, Dr. Khan entered the command center, her excitement evident despite the crystalline patterns now adorning her skin. "Admiral, you need to see this." She activated the main display, showing real-time readings from the station's sensors. "The Void Hunters are actually helping us map subspace. Their awareness exists partially outside our dimension, allowing them to perceive spatial anomalies we can't detect with conventional technology." Admiral Blackwood studied the display, his military mind already calculating the tactical advantages. "And what do they get in return?" "Purpose," Lyra said simply. "For eons, they've existed as pure consumers. Now they're contributing to something greater than themselves." "A balanced exchange," the Admiral murmured, almost to himself. "Exactly like what happened between our species," Dominic added. "The Nyxtari were declining, their potential suppressed by the synthetic plasma. Humans had reached the limits of our physical evolution. Together, we've found a new path forward." "That's all very poetic, Commander, but I'm more concerned with practical matters." Admiral Blackwood straightened, military formality reasserting itself. "The Terran Senate wants answers, and the Nyxtari High Council is divided. Half want to embrace this transformation. The other half want to shut it down completely. You're in the middle of an interstellar political crisis." "Which is why we need your help, Admiral," Captain Torres said. "You have influence in the Senate. Your assessment of the situation here will carry weight." Before the Admiral could respond, the station's communications officer interrupted. "Captain, we're receiving a transmission from Nyxtari High Command. They're requesting to speak with the person they're calling the First Balanced One. I think they mean Commander Reed." All eyes turned to Dominic, who looked to Lyra. Through their bond, he felt her mixture of concern and hope. "Made their decision," she said softly, "for better or worse." The main screen activated to reveal a Nyxtari face that none of them recognized, older than any they had seen before, with patterns so complex they seemed to shift and change as they watched. "I am Elder Calix," the ancient Nyxtari announced, his voice resonating with power that even the translator couldn't fully convey. "Long have I kept the true histories of our people, waiting for the day of awakening. That day has come sooner than we expected, and in a form we never anticipated." "You knew," Lyra breathed. "You've always known about our true nature." "A select few in each generation were entrusted with the knowledge," Elder Calix confirmed, "to prepare for the day when the darkness would pass and we could safely return to our true forms. But we never foresaw this balanced state, this symbiosis with humanity." Admiral Blackwood stepped forward. "Elder Calix, I am Admiral Julian Blackwood of Earth Defense Command. I must ask, does this transformation pose a threat to either of our civilizations?" "The only threat, Admiral, is resistance to change." Elder Calix's ancient eyes seemed to look through them all. "The The High Council has debated for 7 days and nights. Half wish to embrace the balanced state, half fear it. They have reached an impasse and have thus invoked the ancient law, a trial of evolution. What does that mean? Captain Torres demanded. It means, Lyra explained, her voice tight, that the future of both our species will be decided by a direct challenge. Champions of both viewpoints will present their case not through words but through demonstration of potential. It is our oldest form of decision-making, from before the suppression. And who are these champions? Admiral Blackwood asked, though his expression suggested he already knew the answer. Elder Calix's gaze fixed on Dominic and Lyra. The first balanced ones will stand for evolution. The supreme guardian of the synthetic source will stand for tradition. The supreme guardian, Dominic felt Lyra's shock through their bond. But that's my brother, she finished, her patterns pulsing with emotion. Orion, the most powerful Nyxtari born in 10 generations. Even with the suppression, his abilities are legendary. Then you understand the gravity of what is being asked, Elder Calix said. The trial will take place in 3 days on neutral ground, the ancient sanctuary moon of Lumina. All transformed beings from Helios Station are summoned to attend. The transmission ended, leaving the command center in heavy silence. Well, Admiral Blackwood said dryly, I'd say this changes the situation considerably. Captain Torres, I need to speak with Earth Command immediately. Commander Reed, you and your partner should prepare. It seems the fate of 2 civilizations now rests on your shoulders. As the Admiral departed, Dominic turned to Lyra, sensing the turmoil within her. Your brother, you never mentioned him. We were raised separately after our abilities were tested in childhood, she explained, her voice distant. His potential was too great for normal suppression. He was taken to the inner sanctum where the original synthetic formula is produced. I never thought I'd see him again. Her silver eyes met his, troubled by memories. Dominic, if he truly stands against us, we may face something even more dangerous than the Void Hunters. What could be worse than cosmic energy predators? Captain Torres asked. A Nyxtari who has spent decades studying the suppression itself, Lyra answered grimly. One who might understand its secrets better than anyone, including how to weaponize it. Through their bond, Dominic felt the chill of her certainty. The transformation that had begun as a desperate measure to save a dying diplomat had cascaded into a struggle for the evolutionary future of 2 species. 3 days, he said, looking out toward the Void Hunters still swirling in complex patterns around the station. 3 days to prepare for a trial none of us understands, against an opponent whose capabilities we can only guess at. Not just any opponent, Lyra corrected. My brother, who once swore to protect me from all harm, and who now serves as the ultimate guardian of the lie that has imprisoned our people for 50,000 years. As if in response to their conversation, the Void Hunters outside the station shifted their patterns, forming a complex spiral that slowly rotated in perfect synchronization. Through the collective bond that now linked all the transformed beings on Helios Station, Dominic sensed something unexpected from the ancient cosmic predators: anticipation. The trial would not just determine the fate of humans and Nyxtari. It would reshape the balance of forces that had defined this sector of the galaxy for eons. And they had 3 days to prepare. Void Hunters emerge. Lumina hung in space like a perfect pearl, a small moon orbiting a gas giant at the edge of Nyxtari territory. As the Helios delegation's shuttle approached, Dominic felt a strange resonance through his crystalline patterns. The moon's surface glittered with structures that seemed to be built from the same material that now adorned his skin. An ancestral sanctuary, Lyra explained, sensing his wonder through their bond. One of the few places not altered during the Great Suppression. Our most sacred ceremonies were once held here. Admiral Blackwood, who had insisted on accompanying them despite the political complications, studied the approaching moon with narrowed eyes. Looks like half the galaxy had the same idea we did. He wasn't exaggerating. The space around Lumina was crowded with vessels of every description, sleek Nixtari ships, bulky human transports, and diplomatic craft from at least a dozen other species. News of the transformation and the trial of evolution had spread faster than anyone anticipated. The fate of two major civilizations with faster-than-light capability tends to draw attention, Captain Torres remarked dryly, her own crystalline patterns pulsing slightly with nervous energy, especially when it's being decided by ritual combat. It's not combat, Lyra corrected. The trial of evolution is a demonstration of potential, not physical prowess. It's about showing which path offers the greatest benefit to our species. And if your brother doesn't see it that way, Admiral Blackwood asked. Lyra's silence was answer enough. Dr. Khan, who had spent the 3-day journey studying every scrap of Nixtari historical data they could access, looked up from her tablet. According to what Elder Calyx transmitted, the trial will take place in the crystalline amphitheater, a structure said to amplify and manifest the true nature of those within it. Wonderful, Torres muttered. An ancient alien arena that reads minds. What could possibly go wrong? Dominic felt Lyra's apprehension spike through their bond. He reached for her hand, their patterns synchronizing automatically. Whatever happens, we face it together, not just us, all of us. He gestured to the 24 other transformed crew members who had volunteered to accompany them. The shuttle's comms crackled to life. Helios delegation, you are cleared for landing at the northern approach. Elder Calyx will meet you there. As they descended toward the glittering surface, Dominic noticed strange movements in the void surrounding Lumina, rippling distortions in space that seemed to follow their trajectory. The Void Hunters, he realized, they've followed us. Not just us, Lyra said, pointing to similar distortions appearing around other arriving ships. They're gathering. They sense something important is happening. Admiral Blackwood's hand moved instinctively toward his sidearm. Are they a threat to this proceedings? No, Dominic and Lyra answered simultaneously, their shared consciousness amplifying their certainty. Through their bond with the transformed crew, they all sensed the same thing. The Void Hunters were not here to feed or destroy. They were here to witness. The shuttle settled onto a crystalline landing pad that seemed to resonate with the same frequency as their transformed skin. As the doors opened, they were greeted by air that smelled of stardust and ancient power. Elder Calyx stood waiting, flanked by an honor guard of Nixtari whose patterns identified them as traditionalists, those who had not embraced the transformation. Behind them rose the crystalline amphitheater, a sweeping structure that seemed to be grown rather than built, its surfaces catching the light of the distant sun and refracting it into impossible colors. The balanced ones come, Elder Calyx announced formally, and with them the eyes of the void. Admiral Blackwood stepped forward, all military protocol. Elder Calyx, I present Commander Dominic Reed and Emissary Lyra of the Nixtari, along with the transformed crew of Helios Station. The ancient Nixtari's silver eyes took in the delegation, lingering on the crystalline patterns that now adorned human and Nixtari skin alike. You have accomplished something remarkable, he said, his formal tone softening. Whatever the outcome today, know that you have already changed the course of our history. Where is my brother? Lyra asked, her voice steady despite the emotion Dominic could feel churning through their bond. Supreme Guardian Orion awaits within the amphitheater, Elder Calyx replied. He has requested to speak with you alone before the trial begins. Dominic felt Lyra's hesitation. We go together, he said, squeezing her hand. Whatever he has to say, he can say to both of us. Elder Calyx studied their joined hands, nodding how their patterns synchronized. Very well, follow me. As they walked toward the imposing structure, the transformed crew of Helios Station fell into step behind them, their collective consciousness a steady presence in Dominic's mind. Through it, he could sense the void hunters gathering above, their usually chaotic forms arranging themselves in complex, synchronized patterns. They're forming a protection barrier, Lyra realized, looking up. There, shielding the trial from outside interference. Admiral Blackwood followed her gaze, his expression unreadable. Whose side are they on? Balance, Dominic answered simply. They've tasted it now. They want more. The interior of the amphitheater took Dominic's breath away. Crystalline walkways spiraled upward toward a central dais, with seating for thousands arranged in perfect acoustic harmony. Already, the seats were filling with representatives from across the galaxy, the highest concentration of different sentient species Dominic had ever seen in one place. The fate of two spacefaring species affects everyone, Elder Calix explained, nodding Dominic's surprise, particularly when those species might be evolving into something new. At the center of the amphitheater stood a lone figure, his back to them. Even without seeing his face, Dominic knew immediately that this was Orion. His presence radiated power, a controlled, suppressed energy that made the air around him seem to vibrate. "Leave us," the figure said without turning, his voice carrying the same resonant quality as Lyra's, but deeper, older. Elder Calix bowed slightly and retreated. Admiral Blackwood hesitated. "We'll be fine," Dominic assured him. "The trial hasn't begun yet." As the others withdrew to their designated positions, Orion finally turned to face them. Dominic was struck by the family resemblance, the same refined features as Lyra, the same silver eyes, though his held none of the warmth that had drawn Dominic to her. "Sister," Orion said, his gaze fixing on Lyra before sliding to Dominic and the crystalline patterns that linked them. "You look changed." "Awakened," Lyra corrected. "Orion, you must sense it, the truth of what we once were, what we could be again." "I sense an abomination," he replied, though his tone was more sad than angry. "A corruption of our true nature. You were always the impulsive one, little sister, but I never thought you would go this far." Dominic felt Lyra's pain through their bond, but also her resolve. This isn't corruption. It's evolution, a path forward that doesn't require hiding or suppression. Orion's attention shifted fully to Dominic, his silver eyes probing. "And you, human, you initiated this transformation without understanding its consequences. Do you have any idea what you've unleashed?" "I saved Lyra's life," Dominic answered simply. "Everything else came after." "Noble intentions," Orion acknowledged with a slight inclination of his head, "but the road to destruction is paved with those." Lyra stepped forward, her hand still firmly in Dominic's. "Brother, please, before the trial begins, just tell me, do you truly not feel it? The memories returning, the truth of what was done to our people." For just a moment, something flickered in Orion's eyes, a flash of uncertainty, quickly suppressed. "What I feel is irrelevant. My duty is to protect our people from themselves, a duty I have fulfilled for 3 centuries. 3 centuries, Dominic couldn't hide his shock, but Lyra said that we were raised separately. Yes, Orion's smile held no warmth. What she doesn't know is that the synthetic plasma doesn't just suppress our abilities. In its purest form, it also extends life. Those of us who guard the source live much longer than ordinary Nextari, long enough to remember why the suppression was necessary in the first place." Lyra gasped, the implications hitting her. "You were there during the Great Suppression." "I helped implement it," Orion admitted, his voice heavy with the weight of ages. "I was young then, newly appointed to the Guardian Order. I saw our people fatting, consumed by the Void Hunters, and I supported the decision to suppress our energy nature. It was meant to be temporary, just long enough for the Hunters to move on to other feeding grounds." "But they never left," Dominic realized. "They kept sensing traces of your true nature, even through the suppression." "A cosmic standoff that lasted 50 millennia," Orion agreed. until you, human, blundered into the equation with your primitive blood and your noble intentions. Before Dominic could respond, a resonant tone sounded throughout the amphitheater, the signal that the trial was about to begin. "I've requested a different format for this trial," Orion said, turning to walk toward the central dais. "Not just a demonstration of potential, but a direct challenge." "What kind of challenge?" Lyra demanded, following him. "The Void Hunters have gathered," Orion replied, gesturing upward where the distortions were now visible even through the crystalline dome of the amphitheater. "Let us see which approach truly protects our people from them, your balance or my suppression." As they reached the central dais, Elder Calix stepped forward, raising his hands for silence. The murmur of thousands of voices faded. "We gather to witness the trial of evolution," the ancient Nyxtari announced, his voice carrying to every corner of the vast space. "Supreme Guardian Orion will demonstrate the path of tradition, the controlled suppression that has preserved our species for 50 millennia. Emissary Lyra and Commander Reed will demonstrate the path of transformation, the balanced symbiosis that offers evolution." Admiral Blackwood, seated with the Earth delegation, leaned forward as Elder Calix continued. "Supreme Guardian Orion has proposed a direct challenge to demonstrate which approach better protects against the Void Hunters. The Council has accepted this proposal." A murmur ran through the assembled crowd. Even without their shared bond, Dominic would have sensed Lyra's sudden tension. "Direct engagement with the Void Hunters," she whispered. "That's too dangerous, even with our balanced state." Before she could finish, Orion raised his hands. From his fingertips flowed streams of pure silver, the undiluted synthetic plasma in its raw form. It swirled around him, forming a perfect sphere that pulsed with suppressive energy. "For 50,000 years," he announced, his voice carrying the weight of authority, "this substance has hidden us from the darkness. It has allowed us to survive as a physical species while the Void Hunters sought other prey. Today, I will demonstrate its full potential, not just to suppress but to repel." With a gesture, he sent the sphere of plasma rocketing upward through the dome, which parted like water to allow its passage. The sphere expanded as it rose, eventually colliding with the Void Hunters circling above. The effect was immediate and dramatic. The hunters recoiled, their formless shapes contorting in what seemed like pain. The pattern of their gathering fragmented as they retreated from the expanding cloud of synthetic plasma. "Behold," Orion's voice thundered, "the true purpose of the suppression, not just to hide but to drive the darkness away. With enough of the pure substance, we could cleanse this entire sector of Void Hunters forever." The crowd's reaction was mixed, awe from many, but visible concern from others, particularly those species with more developed energy sensitivities. "But at what cost?" Lyra's voice cut through the murmuring. She stepped forward, still holding Dominic's hand, their patterns glowing brighter in response to the challenge. "The synthetic plasma doesn't just suppress our connection to our energy nature, it suppresses all energy connections. It doesn't just hide us from the Void Hunters, it severs our ancient bonds with all life." Through their shared consciousness, Dominic felt the collective understanding of the transformed crew. He stepped forward with Lyra. "The Supreme Guardian has shown you only half the equation," he called out. "Yes, the plasma repels the Void Hunters because it deadens all energy. It's like salting the earth to kill weeds, effective, but nothing will ever grow there again." Lyra raised their joined hands, their synchronized patterns brightening. "We offer a different path, not suppression but balance, not isolation but connection." With a shared thought, they reached out through their collective consciousness, connecting not just with the transformed crew but with the Void Hunters themselves. The link they had forged on Helios Station expanded, stretching up through the dome to touch the retreating entities. At first, nothing seemed to happen. The Void Hunters continued to flee from Orion's expanding plasma cloud. Then slowly, one of the hunters separated from the others. It descended through the dome, a swirling darkness that caused gasps of fear from the assembled crowd. But instead of attacking, it hovered before Lyra and Dominic, its formless shape gradually stabilizing into something more defined, a spiraling pattern that echoed the crystalline structures around them. "They're not our enemies," Lyra said softly, though her voice carried in the perfect acoustics of the amphitheater. "They're part of the cosmic balance energy consumers who help maintain equilibrium. Our ancestors feared them because they couldn't control them. But we don't need to control. We need to understand." Dominic extended his free hand toward the stabilized Void Hunter. "In our balanced state, we can share energy without being consumed. We can communicate instead of hide." The Void Hunter extended a tendril of darkness, touching Dominic's outstretched hand. Instead of pain, he felt a surge of connection, a consciousness vast and alien yet increasingly comprehensible through their shared bond. Through the collective awareness of the transformed crew, the assembled witnesses felt it too, a glimpse of how the Void Hunters perceived reality, existing partially in normal space and partially in the energy dimensions beyond. "This is what balance offers," Lyra announced. "Not just survival but understanding, not just protection but partnership." Orion watched, his expression unreadable, as more Void Hunters began to descend, their chaotic forms settling into more stable patterns as they approached the transformed crew. Each hunter that touched the balanced ones gained definition, purpose, stability. "An impressive display," Orion acknowledged, his voice carrying a trace of genuine respect. "But fundamentally flawed. You offer them a taste of balanced energy freely given. What happens when that novelty wears off, when they hunger for more than you're willing to give?" As if responding to his words, one of the Void Hunters suddenly surged forward, engulfing 3 of the transformed crew members in darkness. The crowd gasped in horror, but then fell silent as the darkness cleared, revealing the crew members unharmed, their crystalline patterns glowing brighter than before. "They cannot consume balanced energy against our will," Dominic explained. "The fusion of matter and energy creates a resonance they cannot break. They can only take what is freely given." "And we give only what strengthens both parties," Lyra added. "A true symbiosis." But Orion wasn't finished. With a gesture more complex than before, he modified the synthetic plasma still floating above. Its silver color darkened, taking on an ominous purple tinge. "The Guardians did not develop the synthetic plasma merely to hide," he declared. "In its complete form, it was designed as a weapon, a final solution if the Void Hunters ever discovered our refuge." The transformed plasma plunged downward, targeting the Void Hunters that now surrounded Lyra and Dominic. Where it touched them, the Hunters' newfound stability fractured. They writhed in obvious distress, their forms becoming chaotic once more. "Brother, stop," Lyra cried, feeling their pain through the collective bond. "You're destroying them." "That is precisely the point," Orion replied, his voice cold. "They are predators, parasites. They would consume all energy in the universe if given the chance. The only true safety is their elimination." The weaponized plasma spread, forcing the Void Hunters to retreat or face dissolution. Through their bond, Dominic felt Lyra's horror, and beneath it, a growing understanding. "This is what our ancestors feared," she whispered. "Not the Void Hunters, but what fighting them would turn us into." The realization flowed through their collective consciousness, reaching each transformed crew member. As one, they stepped forward, forming a circle around the remaining Void Hunters. "There is another way," Dominic called out, his voice carrying the conviction of them all. "Not suppression, not destruction, balance." With a shared thought, the transformed beings channeled their energy, creating a shield that neutralized the weaponized plasma. Within their protective circle, the Void Hunters began to stabilize once more. Orion's eyes widened in genuine surprise. Impossible. The weapon form is absolute. Nothing can resist it. Nothing except balance, Lyra replied. Matter anchoring energy, stability tempering power. The path our ancestors never discovered because they were too focused on transcendence. The standoff held, Orion's weaponized plasma pressing against the balanced shield, neither able to overcome the other. Through the collective bond, Dominic sensed the strain on all the transformed crew, but also their unwavering resolve. Elder Calix stepped forward, his ancient eyes moving from Orion to Lyra and back. The trial reveals truth that cannot be denied. Both paths offer protection, but only one offers future. Orion's concentration wavered, the pressure of his attack diminishing slightly. You cannot be considering this abomination as our species' path forward. The risks are less than the certainty of stagnation, Elder Calix finished. For 50 millennia we have hidden Supreme Guardian. We have survived but not lived. We have existed but not evolved. The Elder turned to address the assembled witnesses. The trial of evolution shows us two paths, the continuation of suppression that has preserved us, or the embrace of balance that may transform us. The choice belongs not to me, not to the High Council, but to every Nixtari individual. A murmur ran through the crowd as the implications sank in. The trial was not meant to force a single path on the entire species, but to demonstrate the options available. Orion lowered his hands, the weaponized plasma dissipating. You would risk our entire civilization on an untested symbiosis. No, Elder Calix corrected. I would offer our people a choice they have been denied for 50,000 years. Those who wish to maintain the traditional ways may do so. Those who wish to explore the balanced state may do so. Time will reveal which path leads to greater flourishing. Through their bond, Dominic felt Lyra's surge of emotion. Relief, vindication, and beneath it all, a persistent sadness for her brother. The Void Hunters, sensing the weaponized threat had passed, began to resume their more stable forms. Through the collective consciousness, Dominic felt their alien awareness, not gratitude exactly, but a form of recognition. They had witnessed something unprecedented, prey that neither fled nor fought but offered partnership. Admiral Blackwood approached the central dais, his military bearing somewhat at odds with the crystalline patterns now visible on his skin. Though he had initially refused the transformation, the events of the journey to Lumina had changed his mind. As the representative of Earth Command, he announced formally, I must state that we too insist on choice. Any human who wishes to undergo this transformation must do so freely, with full understanding of the consequences. Elder Calix nodded. Of course, forced evolution is no evolution at all. Orion stood alone now, the last defender of a tradition that had defined Nixtari civilization for 50 millennia. His silver eyes met Lyra's, and through their bond, Dominic felt her reaching out to her brother, not with triumph but with understanding. Join us, she said softly. See what we've discovered, feel what we've become. For a long moment, Orion remained motionless, his expression unreadable. Then, with deliberate slowness, he extended his hand toward Lyra. I cannot embrace what you've become, he said, his voice heavy with the weight of centuries. Not yet, but I will. Observe. The Supreme Guardian must understand all paths, even those he does not walk. As their hands met, no transformation occurred. Orion's commitment to the old ways was too deep for an instantaneous change. But something passed between them, a recognition that transcended their philosophical divide. Above them, the Void Hunters had formed a new pattern, a spiraling double helix that encompassed the entire amphitheater. Through the collective consciousness, Dominic sensed their message. The universe was changing. A new balance was forming, and they would be part of it. The trial of evolution was over, but the true evolution of two species, of the Void Hunters, of the entire sector, was just beginning. And as the first balanced one stood at the center of it all, their joined hands glowing with the promise of what was to come, Dominic knew with absolute certainty that neither humanity nor the Nixtari would ever be the same again. For better or worse, they had become something new, something balanced, something with the potential to guide rather than guard, to connect rather than control. The future awaited, vast and luminous with possibility.